Hey, it's Shabes, and welcome to another edition of AniTube Digest, where we go over the best and the not so best anime YouTube videos to come out this week from the 26th of September, the 2nd of October. This was a rough week. I'm not gonna lie. There are two not goods in this digest. I stumbled at this. Granted, I definitely felt this was mid-time, but I was like, well, maybe it'll actually cause some discussion. And then there was one that I was like teetering on just giving it not good, but I'll probably give it a decent with an asterisk. And then the rest, even the best videos, I was like, yeah. But I feel like in other weeks, I don't know if I'd put them in best, but just because of the assortment we have here, right? But no, I still like those videos. Anyway, yeah. So first for the videos that I thought were not good videos, and the first one's from Gigguk. Yeah, I mean, who could have seen that coming? When anime goes horribly wrong, just taking a giant dump on Garzy's wing, of all things. I don't know where this came from, of all places, and you can tell he's asleep at the wheel, this one. He's not even trying. He didn't even, he forgot to record his outro for this video. And that's not supposed to be, oh, this was a mistake or whatever, but I feel like it was indicative of the quality on here, because it wasn't even yeah, I can go in on him saying oh, you didn't even talk about this as a spin-off of Dunbine or where this is coming from. The most he talks about Tomino is towards the end. He's like, you'd think that this is some random nobody who doesn't know what anime, never worked on it again. Close. He says close because I get it's a hyperbolic joke to kind of but okay. And then he just shows Tomino and he's like, oh, it's this guy. And he only made Gundam. And he just snickers at it. And then he puts in Comic Sans white text of he created Gundam. I'm not joking. Some other snide comment. And it's it's really lame. It's not even insulting or anything. It's just really lazy and limp. This is it? Really? It's not even that funny. And his Cell comment is also not that punchy or flagrantly wrong or anything like that. I don't even feel the need to even dig into this video. It's just him at the wheel, asleep at the wheel. And so it's why should I put the effort to dissect it? This is why you're wrong about whatever. The show was outshining him. Every time he showed a clip from the show, from Garzy's wing, it was genuinely funny. Because the dub happens to be kind of silly. And I liked that Alan actually showed some clips that aren't always that used. It's not the same one. It's obviously some of the exact same ones that you would expect from a Garzy's wing video, but some other ones that I don't normally hear of, Grandma, why'd you make hot noodles on such a hot day? But and I laughed at that because it sounds like a Tomino-ism of just kind of this observation that you don't normally speak out loud, but the characters have the courage to say it. They just kind of speak their mind almost, kind of like Tomino does. I don't know. I've always thought and I've never rewatched Garzy's Wing since becoming a Tomino fan. I feel like I would actually enjoy it more now that I am accustomed to his dialogue, and I don't know, maybe even if I watched Dunbine first and then checking it out. But people do seem to be a little more warm to it, and that's why he has to fake in the thumbnail that it's a 1.85, but that's the score for Skelter Heaven and not Garzy's Wing, which is at about a 3 or 4, which is still abysmally low, of course, but it's not, I don't know. It just seemed weird, and it was the show was actually more entertaining than whenever he would interject, and that's a really bad sign because this is supposed to not be a good show, right? Yeah, it was just really bizarre. Kind of came out of nowhere. It felt like a filler type of, I gotta get a video out this month type of deal. And look, I get you're in those positions sometimes. I get it, the grind. I understand. He was probably because of his London tour, or not London tour, the European tour that Trash Taste was on. I don't know what kind of schedule they've really been. I know they had that big Europe tour, but I don't know how much content that means that they've had to pan out or have some break and stuff like that. It doesn't feel as trackable there, but maybe because I haven't been paying attention as much. I don't know, maybe. But yeah, I wouldn't have even just released this. So just take a month off, dude. But I guess it's all right. Well, whatever. And yeah, the other not good was kind of yeah, of course. Genmo Warriors another worst anime contender from BennettTheSage. I obviously wanted to cover it because it's been a while since he uploaded anything, and it's because he's been working on his other projects, and I think he should keep working on those other projects. Actually, I think you should keep going, man. Don't worry about this. You got your 100K, you got that recognition. But I guess he's fired up, ready to keep going, and like, okay. But yeah, this is covering I guess the TV series adaptation of Genma Tyson. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like it's anything to really sniff at in terms of like, it's like, oh, he's saying this bad thing about a show some people might like. I don't really know that many people that enjoy this show or anything like that, and that's fine. But it just, the approach that he had, his typical approach, right, of just kind of riffing on it every so often, but like, it doesn't quite work as well with a 13 episode TV series that he can't completely recount. So every time the whole video is him recounting it. Like he's trying to tell you this story, and I can't follow it because he's obviously causing so many gaps and skipping over so many things, and it's not like and obviously the show doesn't help being kind of incoherent or whatever to it. It's just it just feels like a chore, really. It's not even that I can like take notes. It wasn't feeling like I could take notes or anything because all of his riffing was so flaccid. It was similar to the Gigguk video where it's like, you don't have anything here, dude. Why are you making, how does one like bring themselves to make something like this? I'm shocked. Like there's videos that I shelved that I thought could have been really good, but because I'm not in the right mental space, I don't think I would have done those videos justice, so I didn't do them because I was in a whatever. But and it's like, but then, not that to say that they're in poor mental spaces or whatever, but it's like, you can do better than this. It's just like, I feel like it kept feeling like, it's like, grow past this. You've made this kind of video for years now. I don't know how many more people are going to enjoy this sort of, especially as like, finally Genma Wars gets taken down a peg. Like, no one cares about this, and that's not a detriment on the show's quality. I feel like if you were to talk about it, I would at least, but the thing is, just by the sheer format of Anime Abandon, it's very, very unlikely that he's going to be treating this thing with actual respect. But if you were to treat it with respect, it's like, talk about it constructively, talk about what it's trying to achieve and characterizations and stuff like that. Don't try to like recount the whole show when you obviously can't within 38 minutes. I just feel like there's a lot of things he was glossing over. And this is the video that spawned the tweet that I put out today, or on Monday, I guess, when this comes out, the other day, where I'm like, he says like, oh, the anime never explains that this and this, and it's like, I don't know whether it does or not. I feel like you've probably said that about other anime before, and people have proved you wrong. They're like, no, it explains it over here, and in this content, like, this is what it's supposed. Not even a manga. Oh, you have to read some audio CD or something, like some drama CD to figure out the context. No, it's right there. You just weren't paying attention or whatever. So not only do I kind of have a hard time believing you whenever you say something like that, and it kind of just detracts from your point, but also to me, it's like, does it need to be explained? To what reason are you wanting it to be explained, I guess? And I don't know, it's just sort of like throwing it to the hands for the sake of it. It's like a video essay cliche, but I'm not being like, oh, cliche, or this has been done before, or anything like that, in order to just, I'm saying it's a cliche in the way that, like, it's not adding to, like, it's a cliche in the extent that you want to use that as a shorthand of proving your point. But if you don't prove your point or whatever, and you feel like it's hard to prove something like that, of the anime never explained this. Like, if you give, like, the closest they get is when they say this, but I don't know, just something, just a flat, kind of a misappropriate use of a cliche. Just because something's cliche, it doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means, okay, how are you using that cliche? And if you're not using it in a way that is actually to the cliché's strengths, the reason that it became a cliche to begin with, then what the heck are you doing it for? that kind of thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm talking out my ass at this point. But yeah, it was just really boring and routine, because it was just like, his riffs are just not that funny, and his observation, I don't really follow a lot of his observations because I've never seen this show, so he's just trying to like recount it in that way and try to be like, this is dumb because da 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 or whatever. And it's like, I don't know, could we talk about the overall arching thing and what it's trying to accomplish and demonstrating certain scenes and stuff, but just by example, not just by recounting the whole thing. I don't know, it's just really frustrating to see. Yeah. And there's another video that I was close to giving it not good, but you know what, there are points about it that I'm like, okay, fine, it is decent, but with an asterisk. I know it's a cop out. I feel like there's certain things where it's frustrating. It's a very even mix almost. But maybe it's not. I just have more critical things to say than positive, even though I can see the positive aspects, since it's not within me to give it a full not good, full-chested not good, really. But it's this video by Bhan. I think it's first time, I'm pretty sure it's the first time I've talked about his stuff. I challenged myself to read every manga from 2000, the year 2000. And I might have missed it, but I don't think he explains why the year 2000. And the reason I want to know why he chose the year 2000 is because that informs the selection that he's choosing from. It's an interesting pool. Did he pick that from random? Did he have a particular series in mind that he's like, I want to read that, but then maybe everything from that year? Was he reading stuff from, before and after? And he's like, it feels like 2000's the pivot point. Any reason, even picked out from random, would have been a reason. But it just seemed like a lingering question. The reason it's like, oh, he never explains that. The reason I have an issue with that is that it just hangs over your head, be like, but why this year? Why this assortment? It was just a lingering question for me. Again, even if he had any reason at all, not even a good reason, but like any reason, I don't know. But maybe he said that and I must have missed it. That's fair. But yeah, so like the reason it's decent, like I like it ultimately, is that it does have manga recommendations that he enjoyed and got something out of. He discovered Taya Matsumoto from this read. He had never heard of the author before, and then he reads 2 of his short stories that came out in the year 2000, and now he's a fan. He's read Ping Pong and Sunny and some of these other ones, and became a big Taya Matsumoto fan, and that's awesome. Learning more about manga, is ultimately the goal of this, I would think. It was like I challenged myself. I don't really feel like he gave a good enough reason of why he did this in particular, because clearly he had an awful time. But it's such a confused, mixed message too, because he's like, this was stupid, I'll never do it again, but I don't regret doing it. And it's like, okay, but which is, I don't know. It's like, I guess you can have a conflicting feeling about it, but admit it's annoying to me that it doesn't sound like you're conflicted. It just sounds like you were pretty adamant that that was a bad idea, but you're just saying it was you're happy you did it because of a little reason or something. Like, as a positive, you don't want to make it a downer at the end of the video, even though it does sound like you genuinely regret doing this in the way that you did it. And honestly, like, I think it's fine to do challenges like this, but it's just like, you need to approach it with the right mentality, because clearly he didn't. Because I don't know what order he was reading them in like a roulette or something. It didn't seem like there was any order whatsoever. I couldn't tell what the order was. It was alphabetical, by length, or by date. I have no idea. And doing that would have helped me understand that, like, how is he choosing what to pick, because he's obviously picking kind of like really dud titles that he's not interested in. And that's the thing. There were some titles where he was able to discern that he just wasn't interested in that thing, and other times where he was so adamant about, like, this is trash, not even just acknowledging that this might not be for him, but just like, and he really melted down multiple times in this video, like has a complete mental break, screams at one point, and it's kind of embarrassing. I cringed. Like and look, I have had made a similar video about Lupin. But the cringing and the regret, the regret that I had about it, I guess, was being completionist. And maybe that's the case with him about like the completionist to 1 year. But like, I don't know. It was like over one franchise though for me. But like his, it's again, it's about what the intention was. If it was to read everything of a year because it's cool, or to learn more about manga, what is it? You know. But then the meltdown you have on video, for me, that was stemming from a frustration of not knowing how to make the video. It was a metatextual thing of like constantly self-referencing, like, okay, now in this point in the script, I'm gonna go this way, and I'm like, I'm having more fun doing this or whatever, you know. And there was a shift in the editing itself, but like this just seemed like mourning and woe is me of like, and being really sick of this project almost immediately. It had this tone literally like 6 minutes in, where it's like, boy, I better hit a good one, or I'm gonna be really mad. Really, like he's just not in a good mood, because it sounds like he's crunching, because he has to make a video in a certain period of time. This is for a video, and he has to make it for, and he's like, I can't even talk. It's like some of these, if they were bad, I would at least be able to make content out of them, but they're just nothing, you know. And it's like melting down. And then there's some of these titles that he's flashing in this like montage of like misery or whatever, that are genuinely like pretty well-known titles, and maybe they're not for him or whatever, but like Wallflower, Time Stranger Kyoko, he gave a 1 out of 10. It's the same author as Full Moon and Kaito Thief John. Maybe Time Stranger Kyoko was crap, I don't know, but like Kyoko was crap. But there was so much. Like one of the first manga he covers is Chobits, and all he says is pointing to the joke of the way you turn chi on, right? That the thing that everybody mentions at Chobits, he just says it like it's a completely novel, like, oh, how do you think she turns him on, or whatever, like as if his audience have never heard of Chobits before, which, to be fair, they probably haven't. Maybe they haven't, but it's like no recognition that this is Clamp that he's talking about, or any background at all. He doesn't seem to know that Holy Land, the author of that, it was really good friends with Kentaro Miura, who and now the author of Holy Land is the one that's overseeing Berserk. I find that's a really interesting thing to bring up, you know. He was going through them at such a rate, even probably through the research and challenge of this, of reading at least, he had to limit himself to doing 10 chapters of every manga, and like limit, and sometimes he'd finish things. Other manga, he was like, they're good, but I haven't finished them yet. Like Battle Royale, he enjoyed, but he didn't finish or anything. There's other ones like that, and it's like, all right, make the video about that then. I don't know. It was just there was just a lot of just video malpractice for me, that I was just like, that's not how I would have done it. You know, that I don't know if anyone else is getting this like YouTube ad where this guy is like stacking a bunch of wood in his truck really sloppily, and then ties one rope, and then the voiceover is like, not how you would have done it, you know, as sort of like a seasoned vet that has no relation to the situation. And you just see this person kind of make this really epic mistake and suffering and everything, and you're like, yeah, I can understand why it turned out that way. The way obviously the meticulous way that he's editing this video too, with all of these cards that has the manga cover, his rating, and sometimes the rating isn't even it's usually out of 10, but then other ones it's just a face or whatever, and then the number of chapters and the genres, and then like the title and everything. And they were like, towards the beginning, I already saw a mix up, like there was a mistake in the labels and stuff. But it just reminded me of the kind of like the amount of work that's going into this kind of video, and countless of the titles that he's talking about has manga animations to it. Sandman, like towards the very beginning, has this incredible backlighting and really cool effects to it, which is really nice. And that's the other thing of like that this video is pretty all right because of the sheer amount of work that he put in terms of the visuals. Really animating a lot of stuff, although you can obviously tell when there's certain things he could not give less of a shit about, to the point where he can't even like, you can get one page, or not even for some of them. He ultimately, there's 100 manga that he read, and he gives you the number of chapters. It was about 1,800 chapters or something, or it It was over 1,000, but it might have been 1,800 chapters, which is a lot. And it's so funny. He has this rant about like sexual fan service at one point, and I realized it's like he literally did the exact same mistake as some of these other reviewers, particularly the authors I've been covering in the Anime Encyclopedia, where uh not that they've seen everything, but they have, in the process of having to have every entry in here, they cover pretty much every single anime that's been made from the beginning to 2001 in this book. And then they did a third edition that big to like 2014 or so. And there's a similar restlessness to be nice about it, or contempt. You can feel the contempt he was having for these titles. Like at one point, like I wrote a ton of notes, but I don't feel like I'm gonna read a ton of them because I'm just not in the note taking go after a mood. But like for Brigadoon, he says, I am 20 years old, but I should not be reading manga that are for people under the age of 12. And that's pretty much all he says when covering Brigadoon. And I haven't read the manga. All I've seen is the anime. And he's like, maybe if I was that age when the anime came out, maybe. And obviously I'm going to say something like, clearly, you shouldn't be doing this with the mentality of, I'm an adult. I should not be, this is not my demographic, or like, and there's a point even like, it was so weird. There's one point where like he was reading a shoujo, and he's like, look guys, I don't want to admit it, but I actually kind of liked this one, but I'm a guy, so you know. And obviously has some like boy thing or whatever. And then later says, even there's a point where he mentions that this shoujo, where is it, sorry, yeah, ooh, don't get mad guys, I kind of enjoyed this shoujo series. It's like, what? It was Eden no Hana, and he mentioned that the author apparently plagiarized Slam Dunk and Reel, which is crazy. I don't think I've ever really heard of manga doing that, which is really crazy. But he doesn't show any examples. He just makes that claim because he read about it, I guess, and he's like, I didn't really notice when I was reading. And he didn't really give any examples, but condemns it because plagiarism bad. It's like, yeah, you want to verify it yourself or something? Or was it like people thought that I don't know. I didn't look into it. Maybe that is true, which would be crazy and interesting, but yeah. Yeah, so like Panipony Dash. Look, there's animation in the manga. So sick. A 3 out of 10 though. And like that's all he says. There's so many of these entries that he covers, that he like, has this whole animation where he has all the titles lined up in a row, slides one out and says one thing about it, and then puts it back like with a rating and stuff. And at first I thought it was interesting that he would actually show the rating before he even talked about it. Like it would start with an animation, it would show the title and include the rating, so you already know what he thinks of it before he talks about it. So it's sort of a crapshoot in terms of like, okay, so how long and you can tell in the timestamps, because he timestamped all of these, of like how long he talks about certain ones. And obviously those like Dorohedoro, Nana, and the Taiyo Matsumoto ones, Gantz, they have a lot of effort put in. He actually enjoyed them. To me, he really should have just talked about those. He really should have just been like, condense it to the ones that you found interesting. Don't subject your audience to the pain and torture that you went through for this idea. And like he nails the idea. Like the reason he did this was so that maybe he read something that he would have never checked out otherwise, he hadn't even heard of. That's what you do this sort of thing for. That's if you were to do this at all. But otherwise, it's like you just need to be kind of an informed reader and just be in the community more and read stuff that you find to be interesting and that you've heard is interesting, or maybe just kind of looking up from the same author. Just do the normal things and not just every single manga from one year at random, seemingly. Maybe just not a great idea, because there is bound to be 10 BL titles that you have no interest in, and all he does is this really weird dance with a blow up Batman, and it's weirdly sped up and not funny and weird and what? And like it's nothing to do with the BL. It's like what? I mean, if you're gonna read 10 chapters of 10 they have 10 different manga of BL, 100 chapters of BL, and you have zero interest in it, do you have anything to say about it? Do you have any observations? Any like aesthetical things or trends that you picked up or knowledge that you gained? Did you just read these out of like a I don't care, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care. Like, what? This is such a like. There's one point where he shows like a full page. And he's like, this looks like a mess, and it actually looks kind of artistic because clearly the character can't see much, and everything's so white, and it has this kind of artsy, sketcherly quality to it. But it looks like trash because he just wasn't engaged with the story or something. Because he's in this project where he has to read all this much manga in a certain amount of time. Right, you're in a pressure cooker. Of course you're gonna like you're gonna be like stone faced. He uses like the doomer Russian doomer Wojak as a rating for Read or Die, and it's like I haven't seen Read or Die, and I don't know anything about the manga. I know about the OVA and the series, but like I haven't seen any of them. But like I hear they're pretty good. I hear people really like those, and it just you were numb. It appeared in the video that you were numb to it because you would go through all this bullshit. And it's like, maybe maybe that's a skill issue. Just, not just skill, but necessarily, but like you're setting yourself up for failure. You know what I mean? Like maybe did you position these in such a way that like you're gonna read this much so you can get to Holy Land, or maybe read a certain amount of Holy Land so that you can read this other thing, or read these amount of manga so you can read more Holy Land. Set like goals for yourself so that you know if you're committing to a big project. Look, I'll tell you, this fucking book was so exhausting to read all of. I read all of it. It's a similar thing, but this took me 2 years to read all of because I was reading it on stream and piece by piece and with people that I can bounce off with, you know. And it was in a healthy environment. Sometimes it was really fatiguing and exhausting, and I could have given up. It probably would have given up if it weren't for the systems that I put in place that allowed me to power through it, and the certain things that I was able to kind of take away from it, all for a matter of greater understanding. It's all a matter of like, I'm doing this like awful, frustrating thing for the betterment of my own fandom, for my own enjoyment, for future enjoyment of refining your taste, you're finding your experience. What have you tried? What do you have experience with? You know, there was just certain but obvious, you know, of course I'm not going to like a video where several, not one, but like, I didn't count, maybe 10 or 12 of the titles that he talks about have just the most complete disrespect for. And to be fair, I don't know most of them. Like, I've never heard of Ask Dr. Rin, and maybe it is everything he's saying. This is his entire... I wrote his entire entry on Ask Dr. Rin, but it was just gross. All he says, ass, trash, garbosh, lame, child, mediocre snooze fest of a romance story. If you were like 10 years old and wanted to read an old, outdated romance story, then yeah, you found the right one. Whoop-de-doo. Like, you're just not in the right headspace. I don't care how actually bad it is or something. Maybe it is just vapid and trash, but like, you're clearly not in the right frame of mind. You're just tired and just like having to type something because you're forcing yourself. And you don't want to be forcing, and then like put it in the video. It's cringe, bro. Like everything that anytime you were talking about something that you obviously had no interest or care for, it was cringe. You weren't even describing the thing. You're not giving faintest of respect. And like clearly he had a mental breakdown in the middle of the video, not for dramatic effect, but like just put it in there, you know, not for any discernible narrative or thematic reason. It didn't feel like there was a lesson to be like, maybe don't do what I did and whatever. It was more like, well, I'm happy I did it because I got to read this short Taya Matsumoto story. Like, yeah, I guess that is nice. And you finally got around to reading Nana and you love Nana. That's great. You know, like there's certain ones that I'm happy that this challenge incentivized him to read. That's fine. But does it is it worth throwing all these other manga under the bus? Several of which I guarantee at least 10 or 12 were titles that have literally never been talked about on YouTube before. And now that is the like 26K is not a whole lot, but it's only 5 days ago. He just had a Chainsaw Man video that blew up pretty well. His channel's pretty healthy. This could get more views. This could just get like, you know, what I'm trying to say is it's like BennettTheSage covering these obscure OVAs, and he becomes the definitive voice on that topic because he's the only one that's said anything about that anime, or in this case about these manga, like Chicago being like these awful things. You didn't even describe what Chicago was about. There was one title where you were like, I don't even want to talk about, I don't want to say what it's about. I was that mad or something. And it's like, okay, you don't need, and the thing, but the sad thing too, and like I keep chipping away at the vitality of this video. There really was only like 3 or 4 that it felt like you genuinely got to a substantive point about the manga. Even the ones that you were like, yeah, it's okay, you didn't have anything harsh to say about them, all you did was describe them. All you did was give a plot summary. And like, I guess that's somewhat useful, but like anybody can just look that up on Wikipedia. What about your take? You're the one that actually read it. You know, like, and it's nice that he's showing visuals for some of these things, but maybe just talk about like the feeling it's a thriller and it does this sort of thing interesting, and you're not telling too much about the plot of the characters or anything. Or maybe you just focus on one character that you really liked, or take anything that you take away from this experience. You know, that's the thing with like all 3 of these videos that I've just talked about. You know, they're talking about bad stuff. You know, they're handling what they consider bad media, and like, I'm obviously in the process of making my own video about something like that I consider to be pretty bad. But it is sort of like, okay, to what end are we making this video for? You know, to what end are we trying to decide? Both Bennett and Gigguk's video were genuinely trying to wrestle with this argument of what was the worst anime of all time is. And like, I find that to be a really stupid argument. I like, who cares? Why are we looking for that? Why are we looking for that? Seriously. I don't see the utility in that. So we know what the bar is? Like, explain. It's just sort of like, just because, oh, why does anyone want to climb a mountain or something? Oh, well, in climbing a mountain, I imagine there's a lot of different reasons people might want to do that. That is personal to them. Similar to how the worst anime is personal to a lot of people, and they might have a bottom one, but why? I don't know. Personally, I don't see why you would dwell so much time and energy into thinking about what you hate. You know what I mean? Just in generally. But see, the reason it's for me, it says I'm defending myself because I'm thinking of all the talk criticism bad. Like, no, obviously not. It's sort of like, it's weird to dwell on this stuff unless you have a constructive reason of bringing it up. You know what I mean? If you're just shitting on it, if you're like, this sucks, it's like, great, thanks. Yeah, this video was frustrating. I took way more notes. Like at one point, he had this like Batman manga he covered, and all he does is just go on camera with a Batman outfit, and he's like, "I'm Batman, 4 out of 10," and then munches on a piece of cardboard. I don't know, dude. I don't think that's it. I don't think that's the play. I didn't find it, but maybe other people did. Maybe people time coded that moment and were like, "That's funny." I don't know. I didn't get much out of that personally. Just saying. But me, yeah, who am I, right? Anyway, yeah, it's ultimately a decent with an asterisk because at least he enjoyed these other manga. And it is a lot of impressive manga animations inside here. But man, it was frustrating. Oh. Okay, now vids I thought were decent. Okay, pretty good. And first we'll start with Totally Not Mark. I didn't check out any of his Z videos, his big ones, because it was like a big series or whatever. And I guess this is technically part of that series of sorts, but it's almost like an after video of sorts. Even though, but I thought he was gonna actually cover all of the filler. Silly me, because it's Dragon Ball, the ultimate filler review. He's only talking about Dragon Ball filler, and then he's gonna make Z filler video, which is much more and much bigger. It'll probably be much longer, like an hour or something, because the way he covered this is very probably, I would predictably similar to his Z series, which itself is probably predictable of a lot of his other series reviews, where he's really going beat by beat and chapter by chapter almost. Yeah, plot, yay, plot summary, yay. My other favorite kind of YouTube video. But look, I've covered, I had to watch, I had to I had like the need to rewatch my own Naruto filler video afterwards, just to be like, what was my approach? Like, was that mine really this dull? And I guess it kind of was. But at least for me, I felt that I was able to at least talk a little more holistically and talk more about filler as a concept and how Naruto is handling that, to extrapolate, just kind of make you think and extrapolate to like, okay, what does other filler do? It's a kind of a case by case basis. But all Mark really does with this is just kind of like talk about what each one is, like what happens in it, and then gives it a rating at the end. Like it kind of goes like filler episode by filler episode almost. Because Ball is mostly, DB is mostly I just abbreviated this Ball. DB has like a couple of more, it's more like arcs, and then it has like one or two standalone episodes. But then he covers every single arc and individual episode by themselves, and gives it like a rating at the end, kind of describing what it is and then how he liked it and everything. And it's fine. I think it's a perfectly kind of serviceable thing, especially if this is a pipeline of his. He has several people where he's working with and paying through this channel, his editors and research assistants and artists and stuff like that. It can make sense that he is writing in such a tunnel vision, not too creative, pretty easy plug and play type of way. I can understand that, I guess. It's just disappointing because I know he can be a lot more thoughtful and I don't know, creative. I guess it just feels like filler, I guess. And I don't know, when he says 100% blind, I don't normally get his reactions. I guess sometimes you get like a surprise where it's like, I enjoyed that or whatever. But it wasn't coming from the perspective of someone who was like such a dyed-in-the-wool Dragon Ball fan and made these gigantic videos for years. Has his channel is practically branded around Dragon Ball, and he never watched the filler before until now. You know, like I get weirded out by that personally, because it's like, were you really that aghast to it? You know, and it just makes me distrust like your perspective. And I don't think anything could have been close to like, what's a 10 out of 10 for you? You know, and the highest he rates is an 8.5. This one episode in particular out of an arc that he rates like a 7 or something. But like, it was a weird perspective for me. But it was pretty uniform, cohesive, edited nice for sure. Fine. But it's just generally disappointing for me as someone who has made my own filler video, and I didn't go. Can you imagine if I actually went through and reviewed every Naruto arc, every Naruto filler arc, the way he did here? It'd be garbage. You know, because there's not much not much there, I don't think. It would just be like really repetitive and ugh. So I can't imagine what the Z one's going to be like if he's going to do that. And there's so much more of it. It's like, ugh. And what that does for his mentality, if he's going in blind like this, and it's so hinged on his initial impressions of it and not thinking about holistic or anything. I don't know. I just don't. It's not very advised. But this video turned out okay, I guess. I'm sorry I'm so like negative this week. I don't know what it was. I've just been I'm in an argumentative mood today. I don't know what it is. I'm ready to fight. I don't know. There's another video that is a Twitter user that I follow, and we're mutuals. And he shared this video. I don't think it's his channel, but like, where did he find it? Nansu. I know katakana, but I don't know it that well. Nonsense. I think it's nonsensu. Nonsensu. Yeah, I think. I could be wrong. And they uploaded this video. The objects are not perceived, and it's a 4-minute lane. Well, it's not even a lane video. I see. So, I the description, all the description says is that it's The Metropolis and Mental Life by George Simmel. So I imagine that. This is very cryptic. One of the most cryptic videos I've seen in a long time, probably of the entire year. And it sounds AI voiced, but not like, I don't know. It seems maybe it's not, and or it's maybe a sample from an audiobook of the thing that he's taking from. But it's set to lane footage, and it's very clearly deliberately set to lane footage, because sometimes the things that are being said in the script are somewhat matching to what's happening in the visuals, but clearly it's not referring. It's this concept that's so out there and kind of philosophical PhD level, and it's like, oh, it's not that hard to understand. Like, no, baby me that I'm used to watching fucking the rest of the videos on this digest. No, I couldn't parse a single thing, but I think it was a decent video because I've never seen something like this, and it didn't. Not like, oh, I don't understand it, therefore bad. Like, no, no, you definitely not. If anything, I like things that kind of are thought-provoking or hypnotizing almost. And yeah, it's hard to say much else about it, really. It doesn't feel like it very ends really abruptly. It doesn't feel like maybe it's a complete thought. The thing is that, yeah, it was very hard for me to crunch it in my brain. I felt like the Gone gif of him like thinking and the steam coming out of his ears of like, yeah, working overtime to really get what they're saying, but I don't know. But I'm certainly subscribed just because this is so avant-garde, I guess. I don't know. It's very thought-provoking, and so I like it for that. Again, it's hard for me to parse anything further, so that's why I can't really push it over as like one of the best things I've seen this week. But I'm definitely interested, and I'm definitely looking forward to more, perhaps, even if I have no further idea what's going on. But yeah, I mean, I certainly liked it. And we'll go into what I thought were the best videos of the week. The one out of the way. Why I hated school art competitions. And the only reason I clicked on this at all was that they had CDog VA voicing one of the art teachers. And for some reason, I guess, like when it was being shared on Twitter, the way I found this was him retweeting it, whatever. The whiteboard at one point had like anime rules on it with like a character on it, and being an art class, it just felt like there's maybe a story here. And my assumption going into this was like, maybe they're going to tell a story about being an art student and being interested in anime, and a teacher pushing against that because of X and Y reason or something. Because I feel like that's a common or interesting story, but I don't feel like it's been told in this way, or at least with storytime animations. But yeah, illymation, instead, it's a very personal story of them in elementary school to middle school and high school dealing with art competitions. And I ended up putting it in best video. Honestly, I wouldn't really have talked about it towards the end of the video. I was just like, well, I guess that was an interesting curiosity, but I don't really have anything much to say. Or I don't think I should bother mentioning it, because CDog just has like a couple of like 2 lines maybe, and they're good. And he does this very classic deep British voice, it's like, yeah, okay, give him something. That's kind of nice. But it wasn't like a major voice part or something like that. I can be like, he did a good job with the 2 lines he had, But I do want to talk about it and do put it in the best, if only because I actually really resonated with the message at the end, because what happened was the story at the end, she was really into art competitions and getting her stuff submitted, and she worked really hard on this soap carved bunny, and she spent all this time on it, and there was another art assignment that the teacher, played by CDog, gave her, of like creating an art project out of a pun. And so she doesn't really like the assignment, and so she kind of quickly shits out this idea of like bell pepper. It's like a pepper that has a little bell in it. And so she wants to submit the thing that she worked on really hard to this art contest, and the teacher submits it, but also submits the bell pepper, and then the bell pepper is the one that wins the blue ribbon, like kind of like the first place, and it's the only time she had ever won like a first place thing. But it was for an art that she didn't give a shit about. She didn't want it to win. And that just reminded me of this concept with like YouTube and just any art that you make, putting out a video out there because you're forced to, or just have it as an idea or whatever, and that's the one that gets success versus the one you put all this time and passion and effort into and you really want it to do well and it doesn't do well compared to the other one. Torture. Really bad. But then yeah, it's that message of like, well, you can control your own art, but you can't control how people perceive it. I think that's a really great message to take away from this. I really appreciated it, and probably needed to hear it. Yeah, it was encouraging. And in general, when I was looking, I was like, I think there was good attention to detail of the her progressing through age, and she has 3 different character models of what she looked like when elementary school versus middle school versus high school. They all have a progression but are slightly different. And the animation is fairly efficient. It's a limited animation with like limited mouth flips and puppet motion. But I think the big kind of artsy thing that I like as an animation experience is all of the background work, all of the layouts, and that sort of immersive world. It isn't just like a figure talking to you for 16 minutes. It feels very immersive, and here's the story, and I'm talking to the camera sometimes, and sometimes I'm talking here, whatever. It feels very realized, very fully fleshed out. Yeah, and I liked it for that. And of course, the backgrounds in themselves, where they pack a lot of detail and little Easter eggs and little things that's like, if you put a little All Might plush in there, that can signal to a young, impressionable audience member that, hey, they like Hero Academia. So it kind of warms you up to them. The viewer who happens to like that thing warms up to the creator even more, despite them never even mentioning Hero Academia. And then and other people don't recognize it, it's whatever. And so these little background details and the richness of those environments, I think, was really clever. It's really, really smart. Yeah, so I ultimately liked it. I liked the message, and it's only in here because of Sea-Dog's involvement, but yeah, I enjoyed that. And it's so funny, I did have that thought of like, whatever happened to Glass Reflection? There was, he had been uploading really consistently, like really weirdly consistently for a while, and it seems because he was working on this, a Death Note retrospective. Okay, so automatically I'm already having like it wasn't that long ago, not that long ago, with Bennett putting out his Death Note retrospective of sorts, similarly lengthy, and not sure where this is gonna go. Okay, and ultimately I think I think Tristan does a much better job than Bennett, because Bennett focused a lot on the meta aspects, so like, kids that are finding an identity in this, and Arcana brings that up at the end of the thing, but he just kind of, it's stupid. He gives it the necessary time that it deserves, which is, yes, you address it, but you don't dwell on it. You don't go in. You don't go hard. Because it's like, you're just giving them more of an excuse or plot. I don't know. It doesn't make much of a difference when a lot of the time your audience that you're talking to are not those people that are going to be like convinced. You know what I mean? So it's like, why dwell that much time on it kind of deal, I guess. But maybe that's the case for some people with, they see with like Contra Boys dwelling on incels and other such things. So I suppose that's fine. But yeah, I felt like unfortunately, I felt like the length was still kind of like, ugh, okay. It is his longest video he's ever made, and that includes podcasts. He's uploaded whole podcasts to his channel, but this is the longest single video that he's uploaded. which is impressive, and that's pretty cool. And I think it was really well made with the design of whenever he's showcasing the footage. He has a nice, certainly nicer than Bennett's, the hexagon little framing. Instead, it's this nice, like, kind of spooky, like smoky thing, and then this nice ornate background and stuff. I thought that it looked much better instead of having to do like full screen or whatever. It had a nice aesthetic to the video. The audio was incredibly sharp. I noticed like something about the audio felt like really booming and like extra noticeable, I guess. Um, but in any, I like that Arcada actually talks a little bit, doesn't dwell too much time on it, unfortunately. I think that would have been a little interesting, where he does mention the spin-off manga and some of the live action films. I did not know that the live action films were like that, like the original ones. Like it was two movies, and it actually changes um the midway point, like kind of the before the time skip moment. It actually changes that moment at the end of it, and it actually sounds better just as an audience experience. I like that Arcada's approach to this was to still, he still has his opinion that the ending is kind of lackluster and why are we still here type of deal. Like it should have ended at this earlier point that most fans agree with, I guess. The thing is, I don't think he ultimately succeeds in having a good reading of Death Note towards the end. Beginning wise, I actually was really compelled because I liked that he focused so much on certain aspects that he found interesting to describe, and the approach with Light not actually being the mastermind that he appears to be, or acts the way he acts and everything. He actually demonstrates through the story that's like, no, he messes up in these places and just kind of covers it with charisma and skates by, or just makes genuine mistakes. And yeah, I think his recounting of the story was fine, but that's the thing. It's a recounting of the story, and it's like, oh, okay. So it's not gonna be the most like great incredible thing for me. Um, but yeah, no, I have seen people, and I can't recount them here because it's just off the dome or whatever. And I just liked Death Note. I was just like, this is fun. I didn't have like I've seen arguments where it's like, no, Nier is very necessary, and that whole last third of the show is quite important, and important that it ends in that way. And there are substantial differences that at least that I know Bennett has definitely talked about. But other like Hiding in Public specifically is the one I'm thinking of, this like really good reading of Death Note at the end. I believe Hiding was demonstrably, there's like really major differences in manga and anime, not in like basic plot beats, which wouldn't have ever convinced Arcada to change his mind, but subtle differences, like small changes that really nudge and tilt the story in ways that are really important. So I don't know if I wholly got that. I think Arcada's take about the Netflix Death Note was great, where basically they should have just not called him Light Turner or these other characters. They shouldn't have just tried to make Death Note. They should have just taken Ryuk after it takes place after the events of the original Death Note, and he just gives the Death Note to another random kid and just sees what happens. And it's because it's such a different story other than that, taking place in America. Misa's a different kind of character, more manipulative. Light Turner has different characterization. It would have worked, and it might not have gotten as much ire from fans if that was its approach, but it wasn't. So I think that was interesting to talk about. Yeah, I liked a lot of aspects in this video, and I think it was ultimately a valuable watch. It wasn't the most definitive Death Note retrospective thing I think is out there, but that's only because it's Death Note, and there's a lot of people who've talked about it. I'm sorry if I may have interrupted myself earlier. I liked that Arcada focuses he kind of hinges his argument on the enjoyment of the audience. Like, yeah, it makes sense, this whole last third, like it makes sense, but what does that mean for audience engagement? Because at this point the audience is thinking XYZ. It's like in storytelling, but more so than a logic narrative type of thing. And I do agree with that perspective. There's kind of a similar dynamic of Death Note in LOGH that I think, because of the way that LOGH set itself up and built up to that moment, a very similar moment as Death Note, in my opinion. It because it laid this groundwork that Death Note doesn't necessarily do. Um, it was able to kind of have a smooth. It was still rough. It was still like but it was still like, okay, logical. The story does have to continue from here, because yeah, it was Arcada's argument, I guess, boils down to like once this event happens at the 2/3 mark or so, it shouldn't keep going. That's the why. What is the incentive for the audience to keep watching after that? Because after that point, it's sort of okay, if the show is continuing, that means it's going to end here, and it's like predictable in that way, I guess. And that's his argument. I guess so. Oh, that does remind me. I do also really like the comparison to Columbo, where the appeal of Death Note is in the how catch 'em instead of the who done it. Because I like that connection. I think that was really smart, and you know, I kind of timely, because you know, Columbo's just gotten more popular these days, I guess. Although it was a little shallow in my opinion, because he doesn't necessarily, he kind of just brings it up, has a little tangent, brings it up, and then uses the same, like the big popular scene of the fingerprints and Columbo going like that. That was like the single most popular got him or anything, but like, I don't know, maybe found an episode that closely relates to Death Note, maybe, and like, oh, in this instance, Winnell is how catch 'em, and that's what's enjoyable, or whatever. I don't know, but yeah, I think his comprehension of the series seemed really, really good for that whole stretch up until that 2/3 mark, and then yeah, and then after that, it's just sort of like he still can't quite get over that he doesn't enjoy that last third, which is a very normie opinion, I think. Not to disqualify it, I guess, but it is sort of just like, I think we can think a little deeper about this, because I've seen better. I've seen better takes, I guess, of just like their interpretation of it, I guess. Yeah. It was fine. I guess I shouldn't say fine when it's in the best category. I guess it's the best really because there's the sheer work that put into it, but as well as like a lot of points I agreed with, and whatever. It's just certain things that just, it wasn't the most glowing, incredible vid or whatever. But yeah, I'm happy he ventured into making something big like this. Yeah, cool. And I go give a best video of the week to Korishere's newest animation, Early Dinner. And this feels like a bit of a step up from his previous animation in terms of the sound design, which I know he's like apparently struggling with or whatever, but it turned out really, really good. At least it seems to me. And I just really liked the surrealness of it. I think he's starting to create a niche similar to like Salad Fingers almost. I don't know if that's like an apt comparison, but it's sort of like the surrealist, atmospheric, thought-provoking, surprising. It doesn't have it has an edge of humor to it, but it's more in the like, oh, that was weird, like, what the fuck, you know, that sort of thing. I really like that. I think the background work is really, really beautiful. I think a lot of just the artistry in this was just like really nicely crafted. It's just so really surreal and interesting, and I don't know if he has bigger ideas. Not that like I need them or whatever. Maybe this is sort of, because I believe he's using. It seems that this is a similar character from the last animation, but it doesn't feel like I learned more about them. It was just sort of like another installment with this character. But yeah, it's just like a really. I'm really hoping he's getting a really good creative outlet out of this. You know, the tape recorder, I think had it sounded like an original song from him. It sounded like it was him singing, and like that's really cool because it's just, again, having more personal touches and finding other ways of implementing an art that you have a lot of varying interests and tastes of like painting and animation and storytelling and music, and you know what I mean, and that like that's so cool. I'm assuming this was almost entirely you, and that's also just like that sort of stuff. That's the stuff I want to really celebrate. Not that it's like, it's weird. I shouldn't feel this way, but when I see illymation having this kind of her video, and at the end she has her title card of like a staff of like 10 or 12 people. for that, you know. And I'm not like that's bad for like the amount of, there's no proportion or whatever. I guess what kind of disappoints me about when I see that is I guess YouTube has kind of trained me, or maybe it's because I do YouTube this way, where everything you're seeing on screen is the efforts of the person that you're watching. You know, it's all of their decisions and blood, sweat, and tears. And, you know, I'm not necessarily saying that like this art is better than this art because this was made by one person. But I mean that is kind of cool. Like I can't deny that's kind of cool. I don't know. And but again, not disparage the other ones that have actual teams or whatever, but I guess as a viewer and as a creator myself, that's something that I really gravitate to, that I really admire even more, I guess. Yeah. So I mean, not that if you did have another person, it's like, well, it's shit now. Then not like, definitely not. No. But it just makes you think, I don't know what I'm saying at this point. But yeah, I enjoyed the video and the video shape. Yeah, that'll do it with this installment of AniTube Digest. Thank you very much for watching. You guys are great. You have a great week. Yo, peace.